I mean, for the last 24 hours, just about now, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been all over the internet. And if you have been following along, man, dude, you have been refreshing Twitter every second for, well, the last 24 hours. And as I say that, Adam Schefter tweets, Steelers and 49ers re-engaged in conversations midday today regarding Brandon Aiyuk. Per league sources, as of Monday night, the 49ers Steelers talks stalled, but there have been further conversation today in an ever fluid situation that still involves other teams as well. That's where we stand. We have NFL Network's Ian Rappaport saying all day today, the Steelers are still in this. The Steelers are still a member of this conversation when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk. ESPN's Adam Schefter comes out and says the Steelers are not involved. They're on their way out. They couldn't come up with the trade demands. Now they're back in it. Schefter says they're back in it. It is a good old-fashioned source-off when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk and the Pittsburgh Steelers and what is currently happening. For those of you who are just getting this now for the first time, this is what's going on when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver and what is happening in trade negotiations. It has become very apparent that a trade is likely, that it is more likely, to quote NFL Network's Tom Pelissero and Mike Garofalo, than re-signing or extending him this offseason in San Francisco. And the three frontrunners for that trade are the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, and the New England Patriots. We will dive into what is happening and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand and what we have heard, because obviously you make phone calls and you try to get as much information as you possibly can during all of this chaotic hour. I just want to say one thing real quick. It is the second week of August, and as of 24 hours ago, I said, you know what? I think we might push that deadline back. Man, I wish I waited 24 hours, but I'll take the L on that one. That being said, all the craziness that is going on, we could break it down into three teams and where Aiyuk currently stands and why the Pittsburgh Steelers might make more sense. But from what I have an understanding of and somewhat of an interpretation of is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have made a trade offer to the 49ers. It wasn't the best trade offer. It's nowhere near the trade offer that the Cleveland Browns or the New England Patriots have made to the 49ers. But at the same time, those other two teams have one big giant question. Is Brandon Aiyuk going to sign a long-term extension here, or is there going to be drama and these teams are going to give up massive amounts of compensation in return for a player who is a rental, which is not going to happen? Aiyuk does not want to play for the Cleveland Browns. You could guess that one, and he doesn't want to play for the New England Patriots. I think that one is very obvious. Pittsburgh would be the team that he would like to go to. They are a Super Bowl contender. They're a team that's on the rise. They have a young core, two talented quarterbacks, a new offensive coordinator. Everything makes sense for that trade to happen, on top of Mike Tomlin being the head coach, which always draws guys in. Now, if the Steelers are not going to up that offer, which we don't know if they have in the last couple of hours, it's going to be tough for the 49ers to say, we will give you lesser value, or we will take lesser value for Aiyuk because this is where he wants to go. But at the same time, Aiyuk might have the ball in his court to say, look, guys, I might not play. I'm not going to sign with you guys, and I'm not going to go to these other two teams. So maybe your only option is to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers or to send me to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've followed it as well as I have. We have talked nothing but it outside of the quarterback competition, which we will dive into after this, which is wild to say that we are going to talk about the first day of an actual quarterback competition after this. Your thoughts of everything as everything has been unfolding for the last just about 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been a very wild ride. But honestly, I think the biggest thing here is on Aiyuk, because if the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't budging, or if they're not budging very much on their ask, from what we've heard, their ask is not near what Cleveland was going to offer, not near what New England was going to offer in trade packages. It comes down to Brandon Aiyuk because he doesn't have a no trade clause. But at the same time, it's the extension that you mentioned, yes, everybody's talking about. So I think that's a huge part in all of this. Is it seems like Aiyuk always wanted to go to either the Steelers or the Washington Commanders. And with the Commanders backing out, that means there's really one person at the dance that Aiyuk wants to go with, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's going to be a huge part of all of this. Is he going to back down from that, or is he going to stand true to that? If he stands true to that, I have no other option but to believe the Steelers are the favorite in this.
Yeah. So it's crazy to think about it, because if you think about the Cleveland Browns, they have They're $60 million over the salary cap in a year from now. $60 million. They pay quarterback Deshaun Watson over $60 million a year for the next 3 seasons, on top of Amari Cooper that they just signed an extension to, which means that they have to pay him this year, Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. There are so many names on that team that are getting paid major bucks that they do not have the room to, I believe, sign Aiyuk to a massive deal. I don't understand how they're even involved. Maybe that's just false. Maybe that's the 49ers leaking information that, teams do because they're trying to drive the price from Pittsburgh. I have no idea. But I look at it very simply and say, it's hard to believe that the 49ers and the Cleveland Browns are going to make something happen because the Cleveland Browns have no cap space to make something happen with Brandon Aiyuk, and they're going to give up Amari Cooper that they just signed for a guy that they can't afford. That one doesn't make any sense to me. And when it comes to the New England Patriots, why would Aiyuk want to go there? Why are you going to one of the worst teams in football? I get it, the Washington Commanders, they have a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels who played with Brandon Aiyuk, obviously have the chemistry. A lot of guys believe in that guy. He's expected to be something crazy. When it comes to New England, I mean, Drake May is a question mark. You got a new head coach, and you were one of the worst teams in football last year and didn't make any moves that really excited anybody. Really hard to sit there and say that one's going to work out. I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers are the front runner, but if I had to guess right now where we currently stand, and look, I stand strong on that 70% that I gave last week and the week before that. I felt very good that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to land them, and I would say this. If a deal is going to get done, if he is going to be traded to any team, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is not going to be the other two. I don't think the other two are legitimate contenders here. I just don't see it coming down to it. But I believe that if you had to take a guess at what's going to happen, him sticking in San Francisco is probably the most likely outcome of this, with the Pittsburgh Steelers trade being a number 2. So let me ask that question. What do you think they give up in a trade for Brandon Aiyuk?
I know we were talking on our walk over here, and part of what you said was, I don't know if it's even going to be a first. I feel like it has to be, especially because part of these other trade packages are a player that San Francisco reportedly wants. They want a player that's going to help them this year because they're going for a Super Bowl, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Steelers are going to give up a player and a first, but I also feel like the first has to be included in that.
I agree. This is a good one. This one made me laugh. Because it would be it would be
immediate.
Could you imagine if Lynch was like, can we talk about TJ Watt? No. I would say a first round pick, possibly. And I think that it could get there. Okay. I think it could get there. I think it could include that. I don't believe the Steelers offered a first round pick. I don't think that as we sit here today, currently, that is the direction that the Pittsburgh Steelers win in. I could see a second round pick and something else, or a second round pick and a lower name player, or however it may be. I could also see where we currently stand. It could be James Daniels in a second, James Daniels in a third. I think that could be in the conversation. And Chris Halleck of DK Pittsburgh Sports was talking with us. He tossed that name out there, and he said that could work out. And then you say, okay, well, who's going to replace him? Maybe you start Zach Frazier, bounce Nate Herbig to the outside. That does make a lot of sense. I could see that being a reasonable expectation for the Steelers. Now, is that the best case scenario? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. Are you giving up your probably second best offensive lineman outside of Broderick Jones for a guy that's going to be here long term? Yeah, I think that makes sense in the eyes of a lot of people. And if you don't think James Daniels is going to stick around for longer in the season, then why not? And if you believe Nate Herbig could be a starter, which I think Nate Herbig has shown that he could be a starter, sure, Spencer Anderson could come in there and can compete. Zach Frazier is your starting center no matter what. I don't know, man. I think if that's the move, I'm kind of coming to grips with it, and I might be okay with James Daniels and a second round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe James Daniels a second and a fourth for Brandon Aiyuk. I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, and it's tough because a lot of this offseason, it's been the Pittsburgh Steelers building from the front back, right? They've spent 3 draft picks on the offensive line, but Well, all that does is, one, it brings in obviously a massive talent in Brandon Aiyuk, and two, it expedites the list and the idea that they have of whether it's Herbig, whether it's McCormick. It's expediting that process of getting somebody else in there. Now, it helps that you have Aiyuk, somebody who gets open very well, especially on quick routes. So maybe you don't have to hold on to the ball as long. It helps that you might have, whether it's Broderick Jones or Troy Fautano, you're going to have a very athletic right tackle over there to help whoever that is. And then, of course, Zach Frazier in the middle, who's also shown today on a couple of, plays that he is very athletic as well. So you have a lot there. And I think that all that does is expedite what you're doing with these younger guys. But if the Steelers trusted Nate Herbig, to be their center coming into this year when he wasn't even a center last year before they drafted Frazier, I could see them being comfortable moving him over to start the season.
Yeah, I think that could be a possibility, and it makes sense. And if the 49ers are very hard strung on, we gotta go with this, then I mean, that's the player. I'm not giving up Alex Highsmith. I'm not even thinking about it. I've seen like FanDuel tossed out like, I think it was FanDuel. I hope I'm not getting that wrong, but I believe it was FanDuel tossed out like Calvin Austin. And I was like, I don't think the 49ers would even consider that. James Daniels makes the most sense. Omar's Barner with one hell of a comment here. And look at, I didn't follow Ricky, man. I refused to follow Ricky for the longest time. I hit that follow button at lunch today. I hit that follow button for Ricky the dog today, and I was like, man, you did it, man. You did it. Well deserved. Good for them. What's your prediction? What do you think happens?
I mentioned it. If he's going anywhere, he's going to Pittsburgh. I don't see him going to the Browns. I don't see him go to New England. As far as whether or not it happens, what's San Francisco going to do? Fine him when he doesn't play in week 1? I think Aiyuk is sold on this, so I think it does happen.
So you think it does happen? What's your trade compensation?
I think it's probably Daniels and a second and another later round pick. I think Omar really wants that first round pick to stick around, hence why it probably wasn't in that initial trade package, but I think it's a second, Daniels, and another later round pick, whether that's this year or next year.
I like it. I'm going to, oh man. My prediction is that it happens, okay? And I don't feel great about that prediction, but to be honest, I haven't felt great about any of them to this point. It has been such a roller coaster ride that every time I talk to somebody and they give me information and I try to come up with a prediction about that, then, I mean, I just don't feel great. I'm always in here like, yeah, man, I'm like 70-30. Do I say this out loud or do I not say this out loud? That's where I stand right now, but I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to end up in Pittsburgh. I don't see how he doesn't end up in Pittsburgh. Things are just too hot and heavy right now. It is way too fiery, and the 49ers are they're looking to get rid of him. They're looking to get rid of him, and they're going to take what they can get. I firmly believe that the New England Patriots and Cleveland Browns reports are leaks from the 49ers to just drive the price up from Pittsburgh. It might work. It might not work. Trade compensation. I'm going to go James Daniels. I'm going to go James Daniels and 2 second-round picks. Second round this year and a second round next year. And I don't feel great about that move, but I feel better about that than giving up a first-round pick. I feel better about that than giving up, a first or Alex Highsmith or any of that. James Daniels and 2 second-round picks I feel good with. I'm going James Daniels 2 seconds. That's what's going to happen. I don't feel great about that. So please, nobody interpret that as like Noah's pushing for James Daniels and 2 second-round picks. I'm simply saying what I believe is going to happen. And if I had to guess, that's what I believe is going to happen.